Hello everybody, my name is Hope and welcome back to my channel. I like musicals, they're part of my life, and today we're going to be ranking some outrageous school productions. Now I'm sure at this point that every single one of you has been in a show that really shouldn't have been performed. I'm talking you were too young and it was too inappropriate for how old you were. I myself am quite lucky that I have only really been in one inappropriate musical, that being Les Mis, but I'm sure there are many people who've been in many others, and that's what I'm here to talk about today. Now before I get into this video, remember that you can like, comment, subscribe, do all of those things, and I want you to leave a comment down below saying what the show you did that was really inappropriate. But now that I've said all that, let's get into it. I have a tier list, as you can see on the screen right now, and I have different rankings for how inappropriate these shows are for a school. These are all junior and school editions, so these are real junior editions of musicals. Some of them I truly cannot believe. As you can tell, I made this myself. Number one, because there are two lots of Les Mis, and that was an accident. And number two, there is accidentally a picture of me and my friend Beth that I couldn't figure out how to delete. So this is what we're dealing with. But I'm going to go through the topics and then we're going to go through the musical. So my red category, which is the most inappropriate category, is just going to be called racism. It's just racism. Because tell me why I'm saying a solid 85% of the musicals that were licensed for kids all required races that weren't white people. So teachers have actively chosen inappropriate shows just off of the bat. And that's why I just call it racism, because that's what it is. There's no two ways about it. Next I have a lot of problems because it's not necessarily racism, but there is a lot of issues that I have in regards to the content of the show, or the show just being a junior version of a show that shouldn't be a junior version. I just have many issues that I have to go into. Next we have why, and this is just a question that I have for nearly every musical on this list essentially, and it's why have you chosen it? Why does it exist? Why did you ever think that it was a good idea? Now this can be for a range of reasons, and I'll go into it with each one that I talk about, but truly begs the question, why have you done this? Because I don't get it, and clearly neither does anybody else. Next we have acceptable but not convinced. These are shows that if someone was like, we're doing this show at my school, I'd be like, okay, sure. I'm not fully convinced by it. I'm not thinking this is a great show for a school to do, but there's also not enough for me to hold against it for it to be wrong. I have some kind of issue with it, but it's not a big enough issue for me to be like, this really shouldn't be performed at schools, and it's more of just personal preference, you know? And lastly, I have my bottom category, and that's seal of approval for shows that I think are surprisingly okay. Shows that, it's getting an approval. If you're like, we're doing this show at our school, I'm like, yeah, that sounds pretty good to me. Don't have any massive complaints. Do I think that most shows in general would come under this category? No, because I think there are many shows that shouldn't be done in high schools that are, but that's not what we're here to talk about, because we're here to talk about the truly outrageous ones. So let me get into my ranking. First, I have Hairspray, and I'm pretty sure there's really no doubt as to where this is going, right? Before I went to my high school, there was a production of Hairspray in which people just wore black and white t-shirts. I've seen white dynamites, so white. They were so white. I know someone who they had a singular black person in the cast of Hairspray, and they didn't have a part. I'm sorry. The singular black person did not play Seaweed, and it was instead played by a white man. It's called racism, my friend, and you are an enabler. And the fact that so many schools do Hairspray, and I'm like, where? Just where? Why, who, when, hair, how? What? Don't do it if you don't have the cast, because it's just racism. That's what it is. Next I have Les Miserables. As I said, I was in a production of Les Miserables when I was 16. Now, you may think that's not too bad, but this was a high school and sixth form kind of thing. So there were year 7s in the show, and there were year 8s playing prostitutes. People who aren't English, year 8s are around 13, 14, 12. That is the age range that you're looking at. And they were fully playing prostitutes. And the fact is, right, all school shows have inappropriate stuff going on. And I'm not saying that's a good thing, and I'm not saying it's right, but it happens. But it is like a well-known fact that Les Mis has prostitutes in it. It's like a whole part of Fantine's character that she becomes a prostitute. And everyone knows, because Les Mis is so well known, that there are scenes with prostitutes in it. And teachers still choose to pick it. And this is a school edition, and they do absolutely nothing about it. Like, I don't remember a large amount of differences between Les Mis, the regular version, and Les Mis, the school version, other than just cutting out music. Like, that was literally the only thing I remember, that it was shorter because they cut stuff out. But there were like year 10s and 11s allowed to grind on audience members being asked to do that by a teacher, by the way. And also, like, they were like, I don't want to do that, I'm really uncomfortable, and teachers were forcing them to do it anyway. It's not appropriate. Why are you doing it? And it's like, when you look at the show, the rest of the show, it's objectively not that bad as a school show. Like, it's really just that part of the show that I have major issues with, because the rest of it, like, yeah, it's about war and people are dying, but you see that in films at that age, so it's not the worst thing in the world. But teachers are knowingly casting underage minors as prostitutes, and that is just not okay to me. And I'm like, why have you done this? There were other choices, more innocent choices. Why have you done it? What's going and why? Also, here's a picture from when I was in Les Mis. I was in the ensemble, and I was fighting for my life because that was the illest I've ever been. Or one of the times I was the illest I've ever been. Could barely see in front of me, had a breakdown, was not a good experience, but I made it out alive, so it's fine. Number 3 is The King and I. The King and I Jr. I don't think we don't really need to think about it. Why in a musical setting, I want to say Siam, I could be wrong, do you have lots of white children in it? Because there are a whole two white people, as far as I can remember, in that entire show. You don't need to cast white children as non-white children, because it is just racism. You know, pick something a bit nicer. You know, it's like when they theatre groups announce, we're doing Aladdin Jr., we're doing Pocahontas Jr., Mulan Jr. You know, you could do Frozen Jr., where the race of Anna and Elsa doesn't matter. Or, you know, Snow White Jr., Cinderella Jr. There are so many Disney films that you could pick that don't have children which require a relevant race that you very clearly don't have. And it is just racism. And like, I feel like I've said this before, and some people who are teachers are like, well, we're just stuck for choice, we don't really have a lot of options. Then don't do a show. Just don't do one. I'm sure people will understand. People will understand if you go, yeah, sorry, we're not doing a show this year because otherwise we would be racists. People are going to be like, that kind of sucks, but also, yeah, I don't want you to be a racist, you know? Like, it's racism. Only do shows with non-white characters if you have non-white people to play the roles. Because realistically, if we're talking about any show which has white people in it, the race of the character doesn't matter. So it doesn't mean that you're pigeonholed for casting. You can pick whoever you want and it won't matter. But in Hairspray, in King and I, it does matter, because the races of those characters is pretty important to the story and the plot, and by ignoring that, you are just being racist. So yeah, hopefully I phrased that correctly, but you cannot deny you're racist. And I feel like I've said racist a lot, but I'm having to emphasize my point because it still happens now and I don't get it. Anyway, moving on. Next I have Annie, which I feel like is a little bit of a U-turn from what I was just talking about, but because this gets my seal of approval. Sure, like little kids playing like Miss Hannigan, who's like drunk and kind of evil, is like not the best, but there are very, very few shows which just have kids in them. And all in all, I'm pretty sure if you told somebody's parent, I'm gonna be in Annie the musical, they'll be okay with that, and so will I. You know, it's a feel-good musical. There's no real issues with the show because it's just nice, simple. Do I think people playing Roosevelt who aren't in a wheelchair is weird? Yeah, but that scene as a whole is just kind of weird to me anyway. Why does Annie meet the president? I really have that question. Why? this is completely unrelated, but why are there so many political undertones in Annie the Musical? Like, we like to thank you Herbert Hoover as a bop, but like it's totally irrelevant to the plot. Anyway, I'm alright with this one. This gets my seal of approval. Next is Cats. Cats School Edition is an interesting one because my question is why, but I'm not going to put it in why, and I'll tell you why. I myself would heavily question why someone would choose to do Cats as their school musical, because if we didn't know this already, I am not the biggest fan of Cats in the way that I'm on the Cats hate train. I do not enjoy the show. I think it's terrible because it's got no plot and no real meaning, and it is literally just about cats. However, it's not that inappropriate for schools to do. Like, it's weird, and yeah, they're all fighting to get to heaven, so you're a bit like, why? But I'm gonna put it out there. I don't think many people doing Cats School Edition are thinking about the in-depth analysis of cats, because I think especially when you're in high school, you know that you're dancing and that you're dressed up as a cat, and that's pretty much all you're really thinking about at that point. So I have to put it in acceptable, but I'm not convinced. Because who would want to do Cats the School Edition? Definitely not me. Someone was like, you're going to do Cats the School Edition. I would get really, really sad. And I'd go, do I have to? Which is why I would think, oh, I'll put it in why. But no, it's acceptable, I guess. From what I remember, anyway. Next I have is Legally Blonde. Legally Blonde gets a big old seal of approval. I really can't think of anything other than that one scene with Callahan, which could definitely be changed or taken out. And I'm sure in the junior/school edition that it is, because that's weird if not. The show is pretty age appropriate. Everyone's having a good time. There's no real, war. Nobody dies, which is honestly an achievement for Legally Blonde in itself. Everyone's kind of okay, except for Callahan by the end, but he gets fired, so everything's great. Everyone's having a nice time. So Legally Blonde gets my seal of approval, you know? Next we have Miss Saigon. I think we see a running theme here with these kinds of shows, and that is, why does it exist? Out of all of the junior versions of shows, Miss Saigon shocks me the most, because literally nothing about Miss Saigon is age appropriate for children. It is literally about the Vietnam War and also about prostitutes. That is the whole show. And I was reading on Reddit and they were saying that there was a version of Miss Saigon where they took out all of the prostitutes. What does Kim do? What happens? There is no Miss Saigon. Miss Saigon is the best prostitute in the town. So if you're taking out the prostitutes, what is she? She's just this great woman whose family's just died. I don't understand, and it's just so racist. Why does a junior version of Miss Saigon exist? Who thought out of every show in the world, every single musical that there is, that Miss Saigon would be the perfect one to turn into a junior edition? Because I love people in Schomburg, that they're great and they write great shows. I love Miss Saigon. I love Les Mis. Miss Saigon is in my top 5 musicals of all time. And for people performing it when it's age appropriate, I think, oh my God, this is amazing. One of the best things I've ever seen. But what I do not want to see is people under the age of 18 doing Miss Saigon. I don't want to see it. Especially if they're not Asian, you know? Even in the adult version of the musical, there are 4 white characters, or characters that are able to be white, which is Ellen, Chris, and Chris's friend that I cannot remember the name of for the life. But it's those 3. No one else. Even the ensemble, they're all people who are Asian. And the show is so heavily wrought in Asian culture, and it's obviously a massive part of Asian history. Like I said, there are 3 characters that could potentially be white in the whole show. So if you know that your cast is 80% white or 95% white, just more than 5%, 10% white, this isn't a show for you, you know? This show is all about Asia. Saigon is literally a city in Asia. And I understand that there is obviously issues with the fact that it's written by 2 white French guys, but this is one of the only musicals that Asian people have to say, I can be casted for this and no white people can. Do you know what I mean? And so this is just racism if you do this show and you don't have the cast for it. And that's all it is. Next we have Sweeney Todd. Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. Now I love Sweeney Todd, don't get me wrong. Also in my top 5 musicals of all time. But I have many an issue with this. Well, I'm putting it in Y. Let's just say that. I'm putting it in Y because this is my question. Why are you doing a show where all but 3 characters in the show over the age of 30? Mrs. Lover, Sweeney, Beadle, Judge, all of the ensemble, every single one, Pirelli, they're all over 30, very, very clearly. The only 3 characters that aren't are Toby, Joanna, and Anthony, and the whole show isn't massively appropriate for kids. Like, it's literally about a man who was essentially carted off to Australia, makes his way back, and then vows to murder the people that did it to him. And it's not even like they're like, oh, they're dead. No, they're murdering them and putting them into pies and having people eat it. That's not okay for kids. Like, literally, like, the one little kid in the show, which is Toby, literally goes mad at the end of the show because of everything that he's seen. And you're telling me you want to put kids through that? And obviously it's not real, and I get that. How is it appropriate? Why are you choosing to do it? Like, what? Like, I've seen drama school productions, so like 18, 19, 20-year-olds do the show, and I still think you're too young. Sweeney Todd is a 50-year-old man. Like, even though Josh Groban is not that old, in my head he's 50 and he's well over the age of 30 at least. So why are you making little kids do it? And if you watched my video where I gave a whole plot synopsis of Sweeney Todd, you'll know the shocking lyric changes for the junior version, and I'm baffled that people put it on. Is it super inappropriate? No, like, it's not racist, and it's not, like, there's not tons of issues with the show in regards to, like, appropriateness. But why are you choosing it? There are so many nicer shows that you could do. And also, making young people do Stephen Sondheim is just kind of setting them up to fail. And I'm not saying that for everyone, but as someone who loves Sondheim, bad Sondheim, makes me really sad. Because he is just so amazing. So maybe you should just listen to me. Because why are you doing that? Just why? Next I have Heathers. Heathers is also a Y, because obviously the show is written about teenagers, but I don't really think any of the source material is overly appropriate. If you've seen the high school version, you'll know that so much of it is changed as to where it's really the bare bones of the story that's the same, and pretty much everything else is pretty different. Like, if you have to say, if you like the Jews, go play Duck Duck Goose, let your mummy fix you ice cream. Like, if you have to change that, clearly the show just isn't for this age group. It's just not. Like, why? Why are you doing this? And if you can't tell, I'm really losing the will to live, because these are just so outrageous that I just can't believe that they actually exist. Like, I get it, it's for this age group, but it's not for this age group. Like, Heathers are played by people in their 20s and 30s for a reason, and it's because realistically that's kind of the audience that you're kind of going for. You're not going for, 14-year-olds. And obviously I was 14 when I discovered Heathers. I was like 13, 14 years old, and I loved it. But would it be appropriate for me to be in Heathers at 13, 14 years old? No, it would not. Next I have Chicago. I have a lot of issues with this, because when you pick Chicago, you are going to be like, okay, the people in this are going to be in skimpy outfits. You know that. And you also know that they're going to be under the age of 18. And that just doesn't sit right with me. Choosing to sexualize minors is not something that I would ever choose, and I would never encourage, especially as a teacher. And yeah, it's so popular. The school where I did Les Mis was a school that I moved to for sixth form, but the high school that I was attached to, they had done Chicago, and when the people in my year were in year 8, and they were in booty shorts, fishnets, and bralette crop tops. These are 13, 14-year-olds, and you're okay with that. I'm not okay with that. And you are a person of power, a person of authority. You're supposed to be looking out for these children, and by picking Chicago, you're not doing that. The whole show is about, like, being sultry, being sexy, if you will. That's what the show in its undertones is about. And if it's not about that, it's about murder. So you just can't convince me that it's okay for children to do, because it's not. I have a lot of issues with it because it's inappropriate and it shouldn't be put on in school. Next I have a chorus line, and I guess it's okay. I've never really thought about a chorus line junior version, mainly just because I've never seen it. But like, apart from Hello 12, Hello 13, Hello Love, which is bizarre in itself. I guess it's okay. Obviously, you need certain characters to be of certain ethnicities, but it's not every single character, and therefore it's easier for a high school to do. Now, I'm not saying every high school does it, and I have a problem with that, but I'm saying when it's just the odd character and not, completely instilled in the entire musical itself, you're more likely to have like a few people to play a few characters than few people to play a lot of characters, if that makes sense. So I guess it's okay. It seems like a bit of a bizarre one to make into a junior musical, but at the same time, unless I'm forgetting something important, I guess it's okay. It's acceptable, but I'm just not 100% convinced. I have one more, and it's Guys and Dolls. And my question is why? Obviously, Adelaide is a nightclub worker, but like the entire show is about gambling and gamblers, and there's a whole bit where they go to Cuba and like get really drunk, and like I just don't really know why you would want small children to do that. And also the cast is just not like very big. Like even the West End production, there's less than 20 of them in the whole show, easily. So why would you do that, just why? Anyway, that was my ranking. As you can see, very, very interesting. But what do you think? Because I think there are many shows that are inappropriate for kids, but just seem to get willfully ignored, as you can tell by my chart. But there are very many more that did not make my list. So what do you think? But before I go, remember that you can like, comment, subscribe, do all of those fun things. You can also follow me at my social medias at XOWilsonX on Instagram and HopeWilson45 on TikTok and Twitter. But I just want to say thank you so much for watching this video. Keep enjoying musicals as much as me, and I will see you in the next one.